What's in the box, Greg? Some great looking parts, crisp and well defined detail. We get a set of masks and a very nice looking etched fret. And a very beautiful comprehensive decal sheet which looks great. This is one of the reasons why I bought this kit. A variety of options here, all looking good. I'm going to have a tough decision on which one to build. I'd love to build a bigger version of this Hurricane in some of these schemes. So I've done my usual thing and cleaned up most of the parts. Care is needed here, these parts are very delicate. Not a lot here, but why would there be? It's a tiny kit. So I'm going to struggle here with my sausage fingers and declining eyesight, but I'll give it a go. Amazing thinness of the tailplanes and trailing edges. So the cockpit is my starting point, and you get an upgrade with a plastic console with some photo etch. With the parts painted black, the decals supplied can be added. One thing to note is that the numbers on the instructions don't correspond with those on the decals. 51 is 38 and 52 is 39. The second decal is placed on the fret piece. Once the decal is dry, I need to poke out the excess film on those dials. I did this with a toothpick. The fret part is placed using a tiny blob of PVA glue. Just hold it in place and give me time to adjust the position of the fret. Once happy with that, I'll add some super glue around the edges just to secure it properly. The harness is next, and I've just added a gentle heat to these parts which makes them more malleable. For 172 it looks good. Now ARMA also supply decals of the harnesses if you wish. As you can see here, there are some immensely fiddly fret parts to add to the walls. So I'm just going to add the other side of the fuselage half, just to make sure that the seat assembly dries in the right position. The main wheel bay is a nice fit. I can start to paint this now. Now I've got ahead of myself here. First was a Tamiya black coat, then a custom mix of interior green over the top of that. Then I'll highlight all the detail by dry brushing a light colour of that interior green mix. The rudders and the control column are added next, as I couldn't dry brush with these in the way. The harnesses are painted with Tamiya XF57 buff. Now during my big tidy up, I found this stuff. I think it's water based, so I'll give it a go on the cockpit. So I'm adding this wash to a dampened surface. Now with the cockpit being so small, I've kept it simple. I've just added a highlight and a dark panel wash. Hopefully the fine detail should do the rest for me. Now my first issue with this kit was closing up the fuselage halves. It ended up being the console fret. It bent during the process. Now this was probably due to my making. So to solve this, I ended up making the recesses inside bigger, which solved the issue. Now I'm painting the undercarriage bay here with a brush at this stage because it's easier and I can get into all those nooks and crannies. Just creating a custom wash here with Vallejo paints for the undercarriage bay. So here I'm cutting out the plastic for the nav lights supplied in the kit. You also get a landing light framework, which is great, but the clear parts are too thick to appreciate this detail. That's a shame. One solution would be to recreate the lenses with some transparent card, but at this scale I'm not bothering. I've just used some Vallejo putty here just to fill in the tiny gaps in the glazed parts. A quick fix. The wing and fuselage just needed a slight adjustment around the front here. Other than that, a very good fit. Nicely detailed undercarriage, but very fiddly. Now you get two canopies supplied, one for a closed hood and one for an open hood, which is what you see on the tweezers. Now once again it could have been me, but the instructions say to use the masks on the right for the open hood, but I found the ones on the left fitted better. Just something to bear in mind. So now I'm ready to add some of the major paintwork, so all the areas that need covering are covered. So the first thing I've done is add an interior green to the outside canopy framework. And while I add the green in the airbrush, I check some of the seams. And of course, I had the obligatory shadow seam on the cowl, which needed correcting, of course. So my first colour, or first main colour, is this. For the undersides, as suggested by the colour paint guide. And then for the upper surfaces, the colour guide suggests these. I will add a small amount of buff to these colours, just to slightly tone them down. The ocean grey added. So my usual white tack sausage and masking is being added, ready for the dark green. Now because of the stripes on the paint guide hiding most of the camo, I ended up looking at the other option here, just to get a better look at the layout. There are subtle differences here though. Now this dark green suggested looked too light to me. Never mind about the idea of toning it down. So I ended up making it darker and richer by adding some black green. So here I've scaled up some of the images on the paint guide to help me with the location and width of the stripes. And from them images I've cut strips of Tamiya tape. As you can see here, with the end of my tape, starting point added, I can work my way inwards, hopefully ended up with the same gap on the kit as on the copy, or near enough. Happy with the layout, I'll take all the white band areas off. So this technique I use on the Tamiya P47 full build, which goes slightly into a bit more detail, if you're interested. With the white areas exposed, the first thing I'm adding is a very thinned down Tamiya white. Not too thin that it bleeds everywhere, but not too thick that it's going to be hard to apply. I'm applying by brush, one coat only. So with the white dry, I'm going to use Tamiya white again, thin down but just with a hint of grey. Paint to thinner ratio is about 40-60 or 30-70, give or take. Now this time the Tamiya white will be applied again, but by airbrush this time. The idea is to tone down that rough brush effect on the surface, but not obliterate it. So you might not be able to see it here because it is subtle, but it clearly avoids that harsh solid white band colour, which I think can be very stark on a small kit. So with the white dry, I've taken all the masking off. I don't need it anymore. Next, I'm going to apply the black, a slightly off black, by brush. The paint is thinned down, but as I said, not too thin, it's going to bleed everywhere, but not too thick, it's going to be hard to paint. Now I should get away with one coat, but sometimes it may take another thin coat. But making sure that each coat is dry before I apply the next one. Once again, I don't want the black to be a solid colour. The whole idea behind this technique is to lose that starkness of the bands. Now I was about to start on the decals and then I completely forgot about the yellow identification bands on the leading edge of the wings. White first, and then an XF yellow with a hint of XF7 red, just a tiny bit, just to warm up that yellow. Right, now back to the transfers. You can see I've already cut some out just to do a test with some setting solutions, just to see how they react to them. Now all the decals settle down nicely with all the solutions, so no issues at all anywhere. I always dread this stage of a build, the decals, but this was quick and painless for me, at first, no issues whatsoever. So I've given the surface a panel wash of Flory's Dark Dirt, then sealed everything in with a light coat of Tamiya satin varnish. So I'm ready for the final assembly now. I've dry fit the sub-assemblies earlier before paint, so should be no issues in the final assembly. So this is a great Hurricane, the best in this scale I've seen so far, and goes together without much fuss, if any. But if I was going to build another one, I'd choose the basic kit. Although saying that, the expert set had 6 colour schemes plus another 3 bonus ones. So why? Well, here goes. Now if you want, you can skip this bit and go straight to the photographs at the time indicated in the top right hand corner. So the issues I had, me personally, all stem from this, the photo etch. It looks great initially, but personally it brought nothing to the party but some head scratching. So let's start with the console. I'd keep the idea of taking the surface detail off, as good as it is. The magnetic compass I would have kept rather than use this flimsy, unrealistic fret piece. Not only that, it's very fiddly to attach. Then I would have added the first decal on the painted plastic part, and then the second decal on top of that decal. So the fret parts are done away with. Now the harnesses are good, but ARMA do supply decals, which look just as good. Now the side console is something and nothing. You do get decals supplied for these dials, but if you want to add them, some additional work will be required. Not much though. Now these levers will be a nightmare for me. To add these to the surface, I'd need big blobs of super glue just to be sure. The carburetor guard that I did attach looked oversized looking at some photographs, so I eventually had to prise the guard off. Talking of oversized, the rear view mirror on the windscreen looks oversized as well. Now the landing light framework I think I've mentioned earlier. Now there is a plus point from my point of view on that fret, and they're the glare shields. A must if you're choosing a specific hurricane. So the fret personally was my only issue. Let me know if you've ever used this fret and what you think. So I want to thank you for watching, and I do hope to see you for the next vid. See you later.